Manx Radio's Update with Christian Jones.
Fastamai, good evening. Welcome along to Manx Radio's Update. 30 minutes of all the latest news, sports, travel, plus the newsmakers in person. Tonight, the Isle of Man takes a step closer to changing the way its organ donation system works. We'll get more reaction to Donald Trump's trade tariffs as the Isle of Man and much of the world continues to digest what this means and how it could affect the economy. And of course, your daily dose of dolphins. After two of Peel's most famous residents have been spotted in recent days. As always, do get in touch if you want to comment on anything you hear. Text WhatsApp to 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. First of all, though, let's join Lewis Foster for a roundup of the latest news headlines. Fastamai, Lewis.
Fastamai. There's concern for the island's agricultural sector in light of new US tariffs.
You can see who's going to be the sacrificial cow, and that'll be agriculture.
That's Robert Morrie, who farms in Andreas. He fears UK politicians could relax rules on American exports in a bid to reduce the 10% tariff levied on British goods from this week. The news that the Isle of Man is to get its first ever Wetherspoons pub next month has been met with a mixed reaction.
It spits in the face of kind of some of the island's identity. Feels like a selling out to corporate culture.
I think it's a good thing. I used to live in the UK and I used to go to Wetherspoons quite a lot, and I was honestly surprised that it's not already here.
Questions have been asked about how the island's live music scene will be impacted when 1886 in Douglas changes hands on the 14th of May, becoming the Conister Arms. And final preparations are underway as the Isle of Man moves towards an opt-out organ donation system. A public consultation on the supporting codes of practice for Daniel's Law has opened, which looks at consent, organ storage and post-mortem examinations. In the latest international news, Russell Brand has been charged with multiple sexual offences, including rape. They relate to alleged incidents in London and Bournemouth between 1999 and 2005. Detectives had been investigating accusations made in a Times and Channel 4 documentary. Stock markets are continuing to slump as countries begin retaliating over Donald Trump's trade tariffs. China's announced it'll tax imports from America at an additional 34%. The British government says it's still hoping to pursue a trade deal with the US. And Scottish politician Jamie Green has defected to the Liberal Democrats a day after quitting the Tories. The West Scotland MSP has accused his former party of pursuing a reform-light agenda. Those are the headlines. We'll be back with the news at 6 o'clock.
Cheers, Lewis. Right, let's take a look at the weather brought to you by Manx Gloss and Glazing. Staying fine this evening and dry and clear over tonight. Fresh east or northeast winds in places. Minimum temperature tonight of 5 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow will then be another dry day with unbroken sunshine and moderate or fresh easterly winds. Maximum temperature not as warm as today, but still above average, around that 13 or 14 degrees Celsius mark.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
If you run a small business or just need more room in the back, Philshore Vehicles has the perfect van or light commercial for all your needs and can sort out any finance. Based in the Tremode Estate, view philshorevehicles.im or call 49 51 49.
A great night's sleep got even better with Zed's Bedding Store. From quality Beldorm bed linen and mattress protectors, fleece and woven throws to luxury duvets from the fine bedding company. Zed's Bedding Ramsey, next to Isle of Man Bank.
SMS Trading have moved to 3 St Paul's Square, Ramsey. For flat pack to fully built, new or second-hand furniture, SMS Trading offer all-island delivery and man-in-a-van service. Call 315151 or find SMS Trading on Facebook.
At Begode Cattery, we have been caring for animals for over 50 years. As a cattery, we care for customers' cats and treat them as our own. Contact Begode Cattery on 676 947 or find Begode Cattery on Facebook.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
Approaching 5 minutes past 5 now, and final preparations are being made as the Isle of Man moves closer to changing the way its organ donation system works. The Human Tissue and Organ Donation Act, also known as Daniel's Law, has entered a public consultation phase focusing on the codes of practice that will support the move to an opt-out model. The law is named in memory of Daniel Boyd, a local young man who became an organ donor following a fatal road accident. The Director of Public Health, Matt Tyrer, explained to me what the consultation hopes to gather.
This looks at consent, how organs are stored, how families are informed, and then what happens around post-mortem examinations.
And what role will medical professionals and families play in final decision-making processes?
Either way, consent is required. So that will either be through people choosing to opt out of the system or family agreement alongside the medical team, ensuring that donation is both possible and appropriate. So if the decisions aren't registered after the law changes, people's families will still be consulted.
An organ donation is quite a sensitive topic. So how will you ensure that the public actually has confidence in this new system?
Within the codes of practice and secondary legislation, there is involvement of a range of participants to make sure that this has appropriate oversight and continues to be maintained and supported. So there are a range of different options depending on which part of the Act is being looked at. But we will have involvement around inspection, we will have involvement from public health around oversight, and we will also have involvement around research ethics from the Isle of Man Research Ethics Committee.
The consultation also covers the management and disposal of human tissue. What can you tell us about that? What does that include and why is that important?
In the past, looking at codes of practice in the UK, there were issues around human tissue being kept by hospitals and by other appropriate care providers, but that was not done with the knowledge of families and loved ones of the people who had passed away. So this is really important that we've got something in place that ensures that appropriate consent is there and that people understand what has happened with organs or tissues that have been taken from their loved ones to ensure that they are appropriately and respectfully managed.
Public Health Director there, Matt Tyrer. And the links to the consultation can be found at manxradio.com. 7 minutes past 5 now, and something that continues to make headlines across the world is what's happening in the White House across the water. But closer to home, a farmer from the north of the island believes agriculture here could be left high and dry by America's import tariffs. This week, the US President Donald Trump announced a range of global levies, including a 10% tariff for goods exported from Britain. Robert Murray from Ballacurry and Andros has told Phil Gaughan it's a worrying time for agriculture.
We as a nation need to be able to look after ourselves and not rely on other people. And I think you're seeing in America now, they're looking after themselves. And if we're not careful, we're going to be left high and dry.
So you mentioned there about Donald Trump, and I mean, there are potentially big and significant impacts on global trade as a result of this. Is there possibly some sort of silver lining in that cloud for food production?
There is a little bit. The trouble is, with food production, it's a bit of a political weapon, like Trump's bringing in his tariffs. So we can all see what's going to happen when the UK government cave in and they need to sell the Bentleys and the Rolls Royces. You can see who's going to be the sacrificial cow, and that'll be agriculture, and you'll see potentially hormone beef coming into the UK from America, and they talk about chlorinated chicken, all those sorts of things. And that's the problem, isn't it? UK politicians, most of them are urban-based, and they don't, frankly, their attitude is, as long as it's on the supermarket shelves, they don't really care where it comes from.
Well, let's turn our attention to the other side of the argument, because it appears it's not all entirely doom and gloom. The managing director of the Isle of Man Creamery says the company remains optimistic about expanding its exports to the United States, despite those new trade barriers. Finlay MacLeod believes demand for Manx cheese will continue to rise across the Atlantic, even in the face of those 10% tariffs. The creamery currently exports several hundred tons of cheese to the US each year and says it's ready to adapt to the challenges ahead.
A lot of the business that we had in the States was on deli counters, and those all closed during COVID. So it's taken us a year or two to rebuild that element of the business. But we're there now, and we are now selling more in the States than we were pre-COVID. And so we're very much going in the right direction in terms of growth in the US market. And they really like the story that we've got in terms of the grass-fed milk, the fact that we're a farmers' cooperative, the fact that the Isle of Man is a biosphere and it's the only complete nation that is a biosphere. We're also building new relationships through a new distributor that we've got based in New Jersey, and that is going very well.
Had you been hit by a 20% tariff, is it easy to judge what kind of impact that could have had on your business?
There is no doubt that the volumes would have been affected if that had been the case, and possibly the margins that we make in the States as well. We have had 20% tariffs previously in the previous Donald Trump administration, but it was only for a few months, and our distributor and the retailers absorbed the entirety of that. And I'm sure they passed a lot of it on to the consumers as well. But it's a very unknown quantity in terms of how much it would have affected us.
Finlay MacLeod, the Managing Director of the Isle of Man Creamery there. And while we can now bring you some of the comments that government has made in response, and it says it's keeping a close eye on the potential impact of those new trade tariffs. Siobhan Fletcher joins us now. First of all, Siobhan, you've been reading through the statement. Just bring us up to speed.
Yeah, fast am I, Christian. So the Department for Enterprise says it has been working with the Chamber of Commerce and other business groups to understand how these new tariffs might affect local businesses. At the moment, officials say the island's economy is largely service-based and so won't be significantly affected as the tariffs only apply to goods. So far, they believe only a small number of export-focused goods-producing businesses with US customers are likely to feel the impact.
It sounds as if there's still some uncertainty there, though. Is that the case?
Yeah, well, the government's made clear that the situation is still in its early stages and more detail is needed before the full impact can be properly assessed. In the meantime, any businesses with concerns are being encouraged to get in touch with the Department for Enterprise.
Thanks very much, Siobhan. It's 12 minutes past 5 now.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
It's been confirmed that the Isle of Man will welcome its first ever Wetherspoons pub next month. Some of you thought that was an April Fool's, didn't you? The Conister Arms is set to open on the 14th of May in the 1886 building on Regent Street in Douglas. The 4-storey venue will have a capacity of 725 and include outdoor seating. With the initial surprise now settling in, we took to Regent Street to hear your thoughts on the arrival of the UK pub chain.
It spits in the face of some of the island's identity. Feels like a selling out to corporate culture. Yeah, the pub scene on the island's not been great recently, but bringing something like Wetherspoons over isn't going to help anything.
We don't need a larger company like Wetherspoons coming over to try and enter the market, because they will take away from the local businesses that are losing out. The point that they're saying is that bringing Wetherspoons in will bring people into the street and get them out there, but into a company that's not going to contribute to the Manx economy.
I wouldn't like to see this change to a Wetherspoons for the atmosphere, if it'd be bland, because James does a lot. He does a lot for the pub. He tries to promote the pub. He spent a lot of money in this pub, actually. I think will it take off? I don't know. I don't think so.
I think it's a good thing. I used to live in the UK and I used to go to Wetherspoons quite a lot, and I was honestly surprised that it's not already here. I think it's a good market for them. I'm not a huge fan of 1886. It's quite expensive, and I think Wetherspoons is going to be, a more affordable place to go.
People have had an invested interest in almost a cartel over here. Don't need to mention who they are. They all pee in the same pot, and they're the people who are a bit more riled now. So the way I look at it, people have a choice. They know what Wetherspoons is about. It's consistent, quick food, decent food, good prices. You can take your family out for breakfast, have change for 20 quid. And what people don't realise is that people with some more money in their pockets, they can go and spend it elsewhere on the high street. At the moment, you can't take your family out for breakfast and spend less than 50 quid hardly.
Well, the transformation of 1886 has also raised questions about the future of live music on the island. Some performers say the loss of a key venue is a blow to an already limited scene, calling it a pretty big deal for emerging artists. However, solo singer-guitarist Trevor John Shimmin believes the change won't dampen support for local music.
This is a very well-known British franchise which is coming over here, and they tend not to put music on. I can't see them doing it here. I think they'll just go with what we do, this is how we do it. But the Isle of Man is a music venue. It's amazing for music, I can't explain it. I do it a lot, I go gigging all the time. Nothing I like better. It would break my heart if the music scene stopped, by the way. I don't know whether I'm saying this because I personally hope it never stops. But if I'm being realistic and honest, I just can't see it. Can you imagine the uproar? Can you imagine it? I'm sad that it's gone because I love playing there. and they've done a great job. So, yeah, I'm sad that that's gone. But what's happening is happening, and there's nothing we can do about it except get your guitars out, get practicing, form more bands, get in them pubs, get the locals in, having a great time.
Well, what's your thoughts? Is live music a key part of a night out? Will you miss live music in that venue, or does it not make much difference for you? Let's take a look at the travel now.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
A couple of things to be aware of. In Onchan, temporary lights on Governor's Road between the top of Summerhill and Governor's Bridge for pavement resurfacing. In Douglas, temporary lights on Summerhill near the bottom of the hill for gas work. Also temporary lights on the old Castletown Road through till the 8th of August for drainage works. Those are the main things that we're aware of, but if you do spot anything on your travels, do let us know by dropping us a text or email as long as it's safe to do so. Text 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. Let's turn our attention to the steam packet, and nothing to be aware of there. Everything is looking like it's running to schedule. And over at the airport, similarly, nothing out of the ordinary there either.
Quayside Tyres and Service Centre with 1 year's free engine warranty from Castrol. Get more with Quayside. You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
16 minutes past
From January
5 now.
on was really quiet, and we were thinking, why is it so quiet?
Apologies, a little bit excited there. 2024 marked the RNLI's 200th anniversary, but it was also a very busy year for the island's crews in terms of call-outs. Lifeboats were called out 40 times last year, an increase on 2023, during which teams responded to 31 shouts. In total, 53 people were aided and 4 lives were saved. Now, speaking to Lewis Foster, the chair of the Peel Lifeboat Management Group, Stuart Blackley, has been looking back on the year.
From January on was really quiet, and we were thinking, why is it so quiet? And then just May time, about this time, it went absolutely mad, and we had nothing on the board, and before we knew where we are, we had about 9 and ended up with 15, I think, in the end. Yeah, so it's just, as the weather got nicer, so did the shouts.
How has it been for 2025 so far?
Very, very quiet. We've been out once this year. I think Port Aaron have got a couple, and Ramsey and Douglas have got a couple each. But we're coming up to our busy time now.
Was there anything else that seemed to signify why there was an increase last year?
No, not really. I mean, years and years ago, the shouts obviously were mainly for fishermen, but because the education is so good now and the fishermen are like really clued up, the boats are more reliable, stuff like that. They don't need us as much now. It's more leisure stuff we do.
We're hearing about things like paddle boards, people out on kayaks. How much of an issue can they be sometimes?
We'll pick anybody up, no matter what. I mean, if they want our help, obviously we're there to give it. We never get there and lecture them about what they should be doing, because you don't want them being in a situation thinking, I'm not going to call the lifeboat because they'll moan at me. We've had some ridiculous calls and some really sensible ones.
What some people might have found slightly confusing, perhaps, when they were looking back at the stats from last year, was that there was 53 people aided, but there was a particular point made about the fact that there were 4 lives saved. So it's like you were saying before, it's going out just to assist people perhaps who aren't in a life-threatening situation. But as we see from those 4 instances, it can be quite different, can't it?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. I mean, those 53 people that were helped, they might have ended up drowning if we didn't go. We can only claim lives saved if they're going to die if you don't get there. So if we go to somebody and there's somebody in the water and he's been in the water for 25 minutes and we take him out, we can claim that as a life saved. But if you've got a boat that's sinking and we get there and we pump it out and it's fine, we can't claim those lives.
Stuart Blackley from the Peel Lifeboat Management Group speaking to Lewis Foster there. Well, local authority elections are fast approaching, and one candidate standing believes there needs to be more facilities for the young people of Peel to try and reduce antisocial behaviour. This is Katrina Baptiste, who works for a charity on the island, and she says if elected, she would try and make the commissioners more transparent and improve communication with residents.
I'm not hugely political. I know that some people stand for commissioner and it's seen as a stepping stone to be an MHK, but that's not me. I've got no high ambitions. I see an opportunity to do things a better way, a different way, and I'd like to use my business background and my skills to help. Sometimes I can feel a little frustrated with Peel Town Commissioners, and I think it's easy to be a keyboard warrior and throw in an opinion but not really do anything. I think it's much harder to say, actually, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and try and make a difference. So that's why I feel compelled to throw my hat in and help if they'll have me.
What are you standing for or on, and what are the sort of key things on your manifesto that you'd like people to know?
There's a few things, really. I think one of the main things is I'd like to see reform within Peel Town Commissioners itself. From my experience as a ratepayer, consultations with ratepayers are rare. And when they are conducted, they're flawed. I think the commissioners are supposed to represent the people. And it's hard to do that if the people aren't informed of what's going on and they're not consulted about what's going on. I can see that there's virtually no communication digitally that happens from the commissioners. And there's a real opportunity there to be prompt, to be more engaging, to be really clear about what's happening and when, and to inform the people. Just as an example, minutes from the commissioners' meeting literally take months to be made public. So nobody really knows what's going on. It feels like it happens behind closed doors. And the processes that take place seem really inefficient and ineffective. And it leads to frustration from the ratepayers.
Katrina Baptist speaking there. And the other candidates are Frank Crompton, Alistair Cubban-Wood, Stuart Hardingham, Ray Harmer, Sharon Lambert, Christine Morton and William Ottino Costain. Now it's 21 minutes past 5, and if you've been to Peel in the last week or so, you may have seen two of the town's most famous residents. Mother and daughter bottlenose dolphins Moonlight and Starlight have been spotted in Peel Harbour. The pair have lived off the west coast since Starlight was born 5.5 years ago. In the summer months, they've often seen interacting with swimmers, paddleboarders and other seagoers, which makes them quite unusual, as Jen Adams from the Maxwell and Dolphin Watch has been explaining to Simon Clark.
Starlight is now 5.5 years old, so they've been here resident to the Isle of Man ever since she was born back in September 2019.
How common is it for them to stick together for 5 years, then the young ones don't branch off on their own?
So Moonlight and Starlight are really unique as dolphins go. They don't behave like normal bottlenose dolphins. So usually you get big pods of bottlenose, mixed sex as well, but you might find that young male bottlenose dolphins do go off and sort of form these kind of groups of like young males that go around seeking out new territories and things. But Moonlight and Starlight, because they are a solitary pair as we call them, they actively avoid other big pods of dolphins. Then it is just the two of them and they cooperatively feed. You see them hunting fish together and things, and they're obviously quite content in each other's company. We don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, one of the questions we get asked the most is like, how long will Starlight stay with her mum and how long will they stay around the Isle of Man? We really just don't know.
Let's turn our attention to sport now, and after his team suffered its heaviest home defeat of the season last weekend, FC Isle of Man's manager says his side needs to rediscover its intensity and desire heading into their latest NWCFL Premier Division test tomorrow night. Paul Jones has been speaking to Manx Radio ahead of Saturday's home clash against Charnock Richards, with the Ravens still looking to end a long winless run, which now stands at 8 games.
Charnock are in a similar place to us in terms of playing to finish the season strongly more than anything else, rather than to get in the playoff positions or to stay in the league. So, that's proved a challenge to us, playing those sort of teams, especially when things weren't quite going our way. So, I hope that Charnock could come in to have a end of season do and switch off a little bit, but I'm sure that won't be the case.
The Lower Brett game, of course, it was a bit of a chastening scoreline. Heaviest home defeat of the season, the heaviest home defeat in general for quite some time as well. So how have you and the players gone about trying to lift the spirits after a disappointing result like that?
Since January, it's been the results. We're not winning enough games of football, but we're not losing very many either. The second goal they scored, which kind of came out of nothing in some ways, really stripped of us quite a lot of belief and confidence, and then we were hanging on. And I've not seen us like that all season. Resilience isn't an endless well. We've had to use a lot this season to get where we are, and we've had really good chats this week. Everyone's come back really positive. They know that we're not far away from being a good side who can go on a really big winning run in the league. It's not quite clicking for us at the moment, but there's lots of positivity in the camp and we're really looking forward to Saturday.
What's been the message and the mission outlined over these next 3 games to try and end the season in the best mindset and best position at the table as possible?
Yeah, it's all about our performances here. I think we've spoken about for a number of weeks, or since the start of the new year really, that we're not not running as hard and as determined as we need to in certain moments in the game. You know, for the last few years, we've had to live on fear and adrenaline for not getting found out at this level of football. This year, we've dominated lots of games, and there's a sense of comfort maybe within the group, but we still require that fear, and we still require that determination and grit that is there, but we need to turn the levels up to where they were last year and where they were the year before.
FC Isle of Man versus Charnock Richard kicks off tomorrow at the Bowl in Douglas at 6 p.m. Manx Radio will be providing full live match commentary on our DAB and AM 1368 channels. Now, sports editor Rob Pritchard joins us now with the latest sport. Faster my Rob.
Faster my Christian. Well, sticking with the subject of football, the 2025 editions of 2 cup competitions will get underway on the Isle of Man this weekend. The preliminary stages of both the Hospital Cup and Junior Cup make up the majority of the schedule for Saturday's fixtures. This will see 32 teams across both competitions vying for a place in the first round proper to come. In the Hospital Cup, there are several All-Premier League encounters, including newly crowned Premier League champions Peel heading to St Mary's in the early kick-off at 1:45pm tomorrow. Among the Division 2 competitors entering the competition this week are Braddon, Colby, Douglas and District, Douglas Royal and Maloo. Elsewhere, among the Junior Cup showdowns, defending champions Ramsey host Union Mills, whilst Combination 1 League leaders Onken travel to Peel. You can see a full list of this weekend's Isle of Man football schedule at manxradio.com. In rugby, it's the final league games of the season tomorrow for both Douglas and Vagabonds, but neither of the island sides will be expected to be getting a simple coast to the finish as they both take on tough opposition in their respective divisions. In Regional 2 Northwest, Douglas, targeting a highest ever league finish of 6th, host title challengers Furwood Waterloo at Portashee at 2:15pm, who are one of 3 teams who could win the league title tomorrow. Elsewhere, Vagabonds are on the road in Counties 3 ADM Lancashire Cheshire against Salford-based side De La Salle, who sits second in the table. A kick-off time for that match is still to be confirmed. And finally, it's also the last chapter of the league campaigns in the 2025 men's and ladies hockey divisions on Saturday. 2 league titles remain up for grabs. The men's Premier League is going down to the wire with league leaders Backers A facing nearest challengers and defending champions Vikings A. And also it's even closer in the finale to men's Division 1. Both Backers and Vikings B are level on 17 points at the summit, with the former only ahead on goal difference.
Fabulous. Well, thank you, Rob. And it should be nice weather for you tomorrow, so fingers crossed for that. That is it for Update this evening. Thanks for joining us, but don't worry, there's lots more on the way for you. Rob Pritchard is up next with Friday Sport Preview. Chris Kinley will then be with you from 6:30 for Greatest Hits. Howard Kane up after that from 9 o'clock. And then, of course, Rhiannon Evans with After Hours from 10 o'clock. Dave Moore will be with you on Monday. Then I'll be back from Tuesday. So until then, take care. Bye-bye for now.